everyone, Alexa Dunn here, and today I'm going to be talking about some of my winter favorites. You guys seem to really appreciate the fall version of this I did last year, so we're gonna try to turn this into a bit of a tradition, and I'm hitting you with winter favorites just in the nick of time because technically spring just started, but I have to experience the entire quarter to know what my favorites were, so it is fine. This is where I go over movies and TV shows, books, music, makeup, and other miscellaneous things that I've just really been enjoying over the previous 3 months, in the previous season or quarter, however you want to slice it. Sometimes it's specific product recommendations, and sometimes it's just the stories that I've been sucked in by. So if you want good story recs, specifically in TV media and books, I have some good ones for you. So we're going to start with movies. It was actually kind of a light movie season for me, even though I saw a ton of movies, but what was light was having favorites. And speaking of favorites, The Favorite is one of my favorites. Probably my favorite film of 2018, and I saw it either in November or December. I saw it in the winter, so it's a winter favorite. I think everyone should see this movie. I think it should have won the Academy Awards, but what do the Academy Awards even mean anymore? Because The Favorite was just a weird movie. It's super weird. I'm warning you ahead of time. It's weird, but I delighted in that oddness. Like, I wasn't sure if I wanted to see it based on the trailers, so if all you've seen is the trailers, I totally get you. There was kind of an odd, raw energy to the trailers, which is both accurate to the movie, but also doesn't accurately capture how delightfully odd it is. So a friend wanted to see it, and I was like, okay, fine. Having a companion's a great reason to go to see a movie that doesn't look terrible. Loved it. Loved it, loved it, loved it. And one of the reasons I loved it is it's about 3 fully formed, developed, flawed women. Gosh, they're flawed. They're probably more flawed than not flawed. But it's one of those rare films where it is so specifically from the POV of and about strong, complicated women, and not the strong female heroine kind of thing. Like, these women are complex and weird. The movie is weird. And these female characters get to be in this oddball, odd movie in the same way that male characters have gotten to be in these movies forever. And one of the things a friend pointed out to me when she had seen it that kind of snapped into place another thing I really loved about it but didn't articulate until she said it was that the women in this movie got to play the roles that men usually get to play in similar movies, not just, you know, standard movies, but kind of avant-garde historical movies. And the men in the movie are all incidental. They are props to the women in the story and what they're doing. And she was like, yeah, the men in the movie played the role that women always play in similar movies. And I was like, it's so true and it's so clever. And I think it makes it double delightful. It kind of contributes to the oddness that the women play the roles that men normally play, but they aren't male roles. They are very specifically, as I mentioned, strong and complex women. And I've not even told you what it's about. It's about Queen Anne and her longtime friend, and you discover lover, Sarah, and kind of Sarah has this stranglehold on the court and is kind of a shadow runner of the government, essentially, because she has such a strong influence on the queen. She is her favorite. And then her cousin Abigail comes from the country using kind of her relationship with her cousin to say, hey, I was looking for a position. And she soon figures out a lot of the dynamics of court and realizes that if she endears herself to the queen, that she'll become the favorite and she can exert power, and through exerting power can protect herself, essentially. And it turns into this power struggle between these 2 women, but really among these 3 women, because Anne both is and isn't kind of keenly aware of some of these power dynamics at play, the politics at play, but there's also complicated emotions involved, love and sex. It's love, sex, and power and politics, basically, and it was weird, and I loved it. Olivia Colman definitely deserved the Oscar for Best Actress, but Rachel Weisz and Emma Stone equally deserved way more kudos than they've gotten. Really, my favorite performance in the film is Rachel Weisz's, just because I think she did some really, the turn that her character has to experience, like from a layered emotional perspective, is really tricky, and she manages beautifully. I both loathed and was rooting for her character in a way that I didn't quite connect as much with Abigail or even the Queen, but not like it's about connection making the best performance. But I wish they all could have gotten Oscars and accolades, because all the performances were amazing. And also Nicholas Hoult has this one scene with Abigail, and let me just say, something that he says to her, this adjective that he uses, is now my favorite dirty adjective. I won't say it on camera, it's kind of that gross. But the way that the film plays with language and music and fashion, love it. My other favorite movie of the winter was Thoroughbreds, which I did not see until the winter, kind of an indie movie. But whoa, again, what a strange film that really both surprised and didn't surprise me and delighted me on every level. Because you can tell from the trailer, it is about two girls who may or may not be sociopathic, plotting to kill one of the girls' stepfathers. And this is all in the trailer, and they're very rich. They're from a very affluent suburb of Connecticut, I believe. And it's kind of it's like twisted teenage girls, hint of Heathers in there. And it is all of that and more. It's hard to describe again. This isn't even necessarily about spoilers, because the trailer is very straightforward about what the movie is, but it has these layers of the character development of these two teen girls and their relationship with each other and their relationship with other people, the faces that they present to the world. And it has this sock to punch ending. I was with the film up until the very end. I loved it, but I was like, it's fine. And then there's this one bit, probably the final 2 minutes of the movie, the cap that it puts kind of on the storyline and the characters. It blew my mind. Not because it was like shocking, but because I was so impressed with how they carried it off, and just this one line and shot and feeling that they left you with. I thought it was brilliant. Absolutely freaking brilliant. And I won't say more because I don't want us to spoil the same viewing experience and emotional experience that people might have watching it. But if you missed it, which you probably did, it was barely released in cinemas. I saw it on Cinemax. And it's still on Cinemax as far as I know. I have the streaming service of Cinemax. Watch it. Rent it if you want. It's totally worth it. It is a pitch perfect kind of disaffected teen movie with A+ performances. Both Olivia Cooke and Anna Taylor-Joy, just bravissimo. Anna Taylor-Joy specifically is one of my favorite young performers. She's amazing in every movie she does. She is very good at kind of both hard edges and vulnerability. I'd say that's kind of her sweet spot. And she does something in this movie that I don't think she's been allowed to do in some of her other roles that, again, I'm not going to spoil. She impressed me on every level. Next level. Olivia Cooke I already thought was really good and has actually played characters that are kind of similar to this before. That's not knocking her. And she nails it. She completely nails her character. Again, not gonna say too much because of spoilers, but 100% character-driven, oddball, not quite oddball, sociopathic teen movie, Thoroughbreds. Check it out. Next up, some of my favorite TV for the season. This was a heavy kind of TV favorites season for me, and specifically documentaries. Documentaries making a comeback in my life, but also I think everyone's lives. There was definitely a period like 6 or 7 years ago where all I did was mainline documentaries, and there were a lot of really influential ones I watched, like Dear Zachary, There's Something Wrong with Aunt Diane. And then I feel like documentaries kind of fell away. Like, I think it was partly because all Netflix had sexy rights to for a while there was documentaries, and that's why I watched so many of them. But I feel like we're in a documentary renaissance. There's some really sexy ones that everyone's watching. It's the water cooler conversation again. And so I have enjoyed many of them in succession recently. So a few that I'm going to talk about. The first one is Lorena, which is on Amazon Prime. I mainlined this one when I was supposed to be drafting, I believe. But I sat down thinking, I'll check it out. I don't like know how I feel about this. And one episode in and I was hooked and I watched the whole thing in one night. It's 4 hours, so 4 parts. And it's executive produced by Jordan Peele, which was actually my first hint. There's clearly going to be more here than meets the eye. And it was essentially a kind of feminist sociological portrait of this tabloid media scandal from the early 90s, which I do remember. I was a kid when it happened, and I have distinct memories of this in pop culture and Lorena Bobbitt as a joke in pop culture. And the documentary explores this. It explores the juxtaposition of how it was portrayed in the media, including the trial and the outcome of the trial, juxtaposed to essentially the true story, the nuances of the story, how we as a society, especially American society and American media tabloid society, viewed domestic violence then, and how we view it now, and how things both have changed and have not changed since the early 90s about kind of domestic violence, internalized misogyny in the media, etc. And everyone involved in it is in the documentary. Both Lorena Bobbitt and John Wayne Bobbitt are in it. And it's one of those documentaries where I liked the way that they used editing, of course, storytelling and editing, but also just uncut interview footage and uncut court footage to allow characters in the saga, real people, but they're also characters, to either alternately hang themselves or ultimately vindicate themselves and make their case. And one of them, which is prolonged courtroom footage, really inspires shame in both American society, in media, in ourselves, because this is footage that existed, but it was never really broadcast that much. It's certainly footage I had never seen before, but I'd seen other footage from the trial. Remembering again, I was 9-10 when this happened. And it's heartbreaking to watch. It's gut-wrenching to watch, and it's always been there, and we really weren't paying attention. I will give a trigger warning for this. It is a harrowing portrait of domestic violence and rape, spousal rape, and just partner rape, intimate partner rape. If you are sensitive to this, there are prolonged descriptions of these things. I think it's very effective in the documentary. I cried multiple times watching it. And again, I felt like a horrible person for buying hook, line, and sinker the media joke. We turned this woman into a joke, and she is a victim. It was a really good documentary. It gave me feelings, and I liked the way that they did it as well. Part one is just kind of what happened and how it was portrayed in the media, the facts as they stood at the time, and then they unravel everything over the next 3 episodes. A+, loved it. One of my favorite documentaries I've watched in years, and that is on Amazon Prime. Next is the big water cooler conversation documentary of the season, which is Leaving Neverland, which is the Michael Jackson documentary on HBO. Again, harrowing. It really does deserve a trigger warning. If you have experienced or you are just incredibly sensitive to child molestation, pedophilia, don't watch it. I've read a lot of comments on kind of forums and whatnot. A lot of victims found that they couldn't watch it. So that's a very valid trigger warning, because the documentary both is and isn't what I expected. It is just allowing these victims to tell their story, and it is just hours of them walking you through every single beat of what happened to them as children, interviewing both the victims and their families to paint a portrait of grooming. I know that it's controversial. I know that a lot of people have difficulty divorcing kind of their feelings of Michael Jackson as this megastar, as this influential figure in media, as a figure, as a human being who changed a lot of lives for the better, who was a positive figure. And if you're not older, if you don't actually remember who Michael Jackson really was at the height of his fame, it is hard to conceive of how this happened, you know, kind of glossing over it. Because as you watch the documentary, it's like, wow, we ignored a lot of red flags. Though I'll tell you, By the time he was being accused and charged and going through trials, I believed it. I did. And I started to change my relationship with Michael Jackson and his music back then, but not everyone was capable of doing that. And the documentary also goes into the complications of these victims defending Michael Jackson for a really long time. And the thing is that victims aren't perfect, and victims' experiences don't go in kind of this picture perfect way that people want them to or expect them to. And I think the documentary really realistically covered this long-term psychological damage. And something I found both heartbreaking and touching in the documentary is the complexity of both of these men's feelings. This is a person they loved, but this is also a person who groomed them to be his victims. It was really good. It was really hard to watch. A lot of people won't accept it even having watched it, or won't watch it because they just aren't willing to even conceive of this. But I think it's some people who we love, people who produce amazing bits of pop culture and media and things that impact us, can do terrible things. And I think the documentary is very important. And I do think people should watch it. Next, for a little bit of levity, I watched a delightful documentary on Netflix called Behind the Curve, which is honestly a pretty fair portrait of flat earthers. Fair in the sense that they let them speak and they portray them as human beings with complex feelings, and then they juxtapose it to the scientific community and a few things to show that it's like, yeah, guys, no. So if you've seen it pop up on your Netflix dash and you were afraid it's one of those kooky documentaries that sometimes Netflix does have, where it wholeheartedly endorses the crackpots, essentially, the people who have the wrong ideas. Netflix has done that once or twice. Like, oh god, they had like a 9/11 conspiracy documentary up for a long time that I refused to watch because I was like, no, not endorsing this. Behind the Curve is not that, though. Behind the Curve is a very smart sociological portrait of people who genuinely believe that the earth is flat and why. And I thought it was really fun. Recommend it. It's short. It'll make you pull your hair out a little bit, but I thought it was really good. So definitely recommend that one. That one is on Netflix. Oh, and I should have mentioned Leaving Neverland is on HBO. And speaking of HBO, they're just putting up tons of documentaries right now. So 2 more ones that I am watching / have watched on HBO. The case against Adnan Syed is still airing as of this filming. 2 episodes have aired, really enjoyed them, but I will say I'm one of those unicorns who has never listened to Serial. You're like, how? I know, right? So I'm going in cold watching this documentary, and it's making me want to listen to Serial. I definitely will. But also, so far, I'm really liking the way this documentary is done. I had heard criticisms of Serial that it focuses so much on the accused that it really ignores the victim. I felt the documentary in part 1 really fairly showed the damage and the loss to a family. They have excerpts from Heyman's diary that really just, she comes alive as a real teenage girl with all sorts of teenage girl feelings and experiences, and it's so painful to think that this young woman's life was snuffed out so soon. And then it's also presenting the story of Adnan Syed and the facts against him and the inconsistencies and whatnot. I'm only 2 episodes in. Need to wait for 3 and 4 to see how this actually comes together as a full story. I expect 3 and 4 will really kind of, it's either going to be an amazing documentary series or it'll just be okay. But so far I'm definitely enjoying it. A little annoyed that HBO is piecemealing it. I have to wait 1 week between parts. Do not miss that aspect of television. But then they gave us in one fell swoop the Inventor. So this is a documentary about Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos. You've probably been hearing a lot about this, very buzzy. Book came out in May. Probably gonna read the book because of the documentary. It is 2 hours long, so it's more of like a documentary movie, and it's by Alex Gibney, who also did the Scientology one, that Going Clear. That was really huge a few years ago. Gonna be honest, was underwhelmed with that documentary, and I was underwhelmed by the Inventor as well. And you're like, Alexa, why are you including this in your video? The reason I'm including this in winter favorites is it made me then listen to the podcast The Dropout, which came out last year. And this is a long form podcast that really goes into the greater backstory of Elizabeth Holmes and her company and the whole thing. It has a lot of the same interview subjects and facts as the HBO documentary, but I preferred it. I feel like I got a much fuller picture of the psychology and the experiences and a lot of the facts. So it's kind of a combo recommendation. I actually recommend the podcast, even though this section isn't about podcasts. But I certainly feel that the HBO documentary, The Inventor, it fills in some gaps because seeing Elizabeth Holmes talk, listening to the podcast, then I could visualize what I was hearing in the podcast. So I actually kind of recommend both. And then I'm not done with documentaries. I'm telling you, documentary renaissance. I watched The Disappearance of Madeleine McCann on Netflix. This one is long. It is 8 episodes. They're over an hour each. And it was pretty intense, or they're an hour each, about. Very intense. I'll admit, when this happened and it was all over the tabloids, I didn't really keep up on the news. I've been overwhelmed with tabloid news for a while, so it was actually kind of nice for me. I got the whole story of this disappearance and everything that happened after in a very detailed way that I appreciated because I wasn't originally following the tabloids, and also because of that there were surprises in the documentary, things I didn't know or expect, and I found it to be quite fascinating. This portrait of this missing girl that blew up as this huge story, and all the twists and turns and possible corruption in the police force, and the fact that sadly it's still unsolved. I saw some reviews that were really lukewarm on this documentary, and I understand why, but I still enjoyed it as a viewing experience. I devoured it over 2 days because I had to work on past pages and film YouTube videos and podcasts, but I kept wanting to go back to it. Really thorough, good watch. Netflix hasn't had this meaty of a documentary on the service since a while, maybe the original Making a Murderer, honestly. So really good, deep documentary experience if you're looking for that. It's just kind of sad because you're left with no conclusion, but sometimes that's just the way that real life goes. But from a true crime perspective, I thought it was a very, very good documentary. Those are all the documentaries I'm going to cover. Amazingly, I know there are more that I haven't gotten around to watching yet. But yeah, documentary renaissance, really enjoying them. I think generally I'm on a true crime and murder kick, probably because I'm writing a murder book, which brings me to my next winter favorite, which is after reading a really interesting article on the producers of Bones losing a huge lawsuit, I decided to watch it again from the beginning. This is a show I used to watch as it was airing on Fox, but I kind of tapered off on watching it, so I never finished watching the show, and I was like, be interesting to go back to the beginning and watch it from season 1. What a time capsule, my friends. So I've been doing that. I'm on season 4 now. I'm on a slight break. I took a slight break to watch all these documentaries, to be honest. But wow, let me tell you, watching something from the mid-2000s that aired on the Fox network really paints a portrait of America. Where we were then, how we're here now, and especially some of the episodes were super cringy in terms of how they dealt with religion and race, and I was very uncomfortable by some of them. It was also really interesting, if you ever watched Bones, there's this huge plot twist in season 3 that never settled well with me, and watching it again, I still don't like it. I think the character twist came out of nowhere. Still don't believe it, still don't like it. But also remembering, oh yeah, once they introduced Sweets and the revolving door of interns, I definitely liked the show better. So I'm happy with them writing off that character, even if I find the plot twist totally unbelievable. But it's kind of nice to go back and rewatch a show that like you watched as it aired and you always enjoyed, but kind of reflecting on it from now and seeing which shows hold up and which don't. And even though I find some of the stuff in early Bones kind of like, ew, little cringy mid-2000s America, it's still a show that definitely holds up. It's a really solid Murder of the Week show with characters that I really care about. So I'm going to continue watching because I know where it goes in terms of characters and romance. Like, I'm not unspoiled, but I never actually watched the full progression. So I'm hoping to watch the entire thing. I think it has like 12 seasons though, which is bonkers, but I'm gonna finish watching it. Yeah. And then finally in television, new season of Queer Eye, guys, season 3. I watched the entire thing in one go, one day. I broke it into two, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. I got to the last episode and like every season of Queer, I was like, no more? Why are you doing this to me? How long are you going to make me wait? So now I've gone back to the beginning and I'm re-marathoning all of Queer Eye because, oh, it just gives me feels. And I love those feels. And I feel like season 3, especially, just some of the messages, which I know sounds so bombastic, but they were really important. I love the way that the guys kind of reflect on gender and they don't reinforce kind of stereotypes on people, reinforce any specific kind of identity on any of their heroes. I love that they call them heroes. I love a good makeover show, but also I love consistently how the Queer Eyes meet their heroes where they are. They don't give them like makeovers in clothing, in hair or clothing, or even their homes that aren't reflective of who they are as a person. They're not pushing them so far out of their comfort zone that it's one of those things where you know that they're never gonna keep up with like their makeover. And they actually genuinely seem to impact these people's lives in this beautiful, positive way and keep up with them. Like, from what I can tell, the Queer Eyes actually still communicate and text and DM with a lot of these people. It's like the rare reality show where I actually think most of it's real. So if you haven't watched Queer Eye, go on Netflix and watch Queer Eye. It's amazing. It's one of the best reality shows on TV right now, and I think it represents an interesting evolution of reality shows where everyone likes conflict and drama and nasty characters, but sometimes it's nice to just have a happy, positive reality show, which just reminded me of a few of our winter favorites. So Queer Eye isn't the end, so we're gonna call this the reality television section. Also Netflix. Netflix has been really beefing up their reality television kind of cash, and also positive reality television such as Marie Kondo's show, which no, I'm not about to talk about. I'm gonna talk about my favorite reality show villains in years. Yes, it's on Netflix, and yet the show is still delightful. It's called Instant Hotel, and it is an Australian reality show that is on Netflix. It's got 1 season so far. I desperately need more. Please watch it. It is weird. It is bonkers, and I loved every single minute of it. This is the one I was binging when I should have been drafting my new book, and I wasn't. It's basically an Airbnb competition show where these people who run their own Airbnbs, but they don't call them that, they call them instant hotels, compete with each other to see who has the best Airbnb. It has some of the most vicious humans I've seen on a reality television show in a long time, but weirdly the show doesn't feel negative. Every other aspect of the show feels really positive, and it really kind of puts those villains in their place. So it's both entertaining but also delightful. I don't know, just watch it. If you like to kind of see the insides of people's homes, which I do, and I also love makeovers because there's also a makeover component, and just some delightful Australians, both actually lovely humans and serious villains, like Disney villains. Watch it. Instant Hotel. It's on Netflix. I really loved it. And of course I watched it because another thing that I did love this winter is I got really into HGTV because I kept going on these trips for both business and for books, and every time I stayed in a hotel I watched HGTV. This can be a winter favorite. Specifically Love It or List It and Property Brothers. I started watching a ton of those, and I realized I kind of missed having cable. Still not going back, but did you know you can watch a lot of these shows on YouTube? Don't know if it's completely legal, but shh. So I started watching a ton of Love It or List It, as well as the Canadian version. Love the Canadian version. So yeah, I guess home makeover shows was a huge theme of the winter for me. Just like a constant reminder that I live in a sad apartment and I really wish I could afford a home. I can't, so I watch pretty people on television do it instead, which is part of the appeal of Queer Eye as well. So this is the reality show theme, makeovers in people's homes. So winter favorite. Next, in a video I swore wouldn't be that long, but it's definitely really long, we're gonna talk about books, but super briefly. My big winter favorite theme is thrillers. As you know, maybe I've been obsessively reading thrillers, partly because I'm writing one, and instead of talking at length about a bunch of books, I'm gonna link you down below to my winter thrillers video, making it easy for you. Definitely watch that. I have a ton of recs. I didn't really read any books that I particularly disliked. It's all recs and kind of different flavors of thrillers, so you can watch that to get some good book recommendations, but I didn't want to leave books out of this video like I did last time. The last time I filmed a favorites video, I was in a reading slump, and this time I'm not, which is pretty exciting, but watch that thrillers video. Which brings me to music. I've had a couple of obsessive music kicks that I do think are worth talking about. The first one is the Vox Lux soundtrack, and you're like, what? I know, it was an obscure movie. It came out in December. Really wanted it to be a winter favorite, by the way. I just didn't love it as much as I wanted, but the soundtrack is A+. The soundtrack makes the favorites list because every song was written by Sia. It's basically about an American pop star who becomes a pop star after a school shooting. It's a very odd little indie film. I didn't dislike it, I just wasn't an A+ movie for me, but the Sia songs are amazing. The soundtrack is incredible. The young woman, the actress that they got to be in the movie, also is a fantastic singer. And Natalie Portman's a very good singer as well, though they're both auto-tuned, but whatever. And Sia is a phenomenal songwriter, and some of the songs on this soundtrack are bangers. Bangers! I wish Smoke and Mirrors was on the radio because everyone needs to hear it. It's an amazing freaking song. Fantastic throwback to kind of early 2000s pop music. Love, love, love. And the main kind of ballady song, which is in the trailer, which I will link to down below, is Wrapped Up. It is beautiful. It is singable. Both Natalie Portman's version and the version by the little girl in the movie. It's just the kind of tune that like is very compulsively listenable, and pretty much all through December I just listened to this soundtrack on repeat. But then it was eclipsed in the early winter or late winter, January, February, by February. Hello, Dolly. So I went and saw Hello, Dolly, the musical, which kind of counts as a winter favorite as like the stage show, but I was just so delighted. I'd never seen the musical, I'd seen the movie, and the movie's okay. Don't love it. Seeing it on stage and the orchestrations and arrangements of the music in this new Broadway revival, I freaking loved it. It was just delightful. And two of the songs are in Wally, and I already knew that I kind of liked the songs, but I preferred the arrangements from the Broadway show, and who was on the Broadway soundtrack but Bette Midler? All-time favorite. I was one of those super cool kids in the 80s. You know I was cool. My favorite movie was Beaches, and I loved singing The Wing Beneath My Wings, and From a Distance. I was like really into Bette Midler in a deeply uncool way, so have always loved her, and Hello, Dolly's a great soundtrack. Bette Midler's amazing. I mean, the whole cast is amazing. And so yeah, I all through February into March just listening to like Put On Your Sunday Clothes and Hello, Dolly and Elegance and Before the Parade Passes By, like these songs, just listening to them over and over again. I feel like some of their flavors probably in my thriller because I listened to these musical songs while writing it. So Hello, Dolly, winter favorite. And last but not least, I do have a playlist for my YA thriller. I still am not telling you the name of my book, but for my playlist, I decided to put some kind of slightly grungy teen music on it. So it's partly songs from the 90s when I was a teenager, but also just some other songs that I felt like the flavor was right, and I've been really jamming to this playlist I created. So it's got Number One Crush by Garbage on it. It's got Stupid Girl on it, also by Garbage. Put some Radiohead on there from OK Computer, such a good album. You know, I put some Depeche Mode on there because there's just some moodiness in Depeche Mode that I really like. I put some Girls Aloud on there, I put some Sia on there, just kind of some pop music that has like a little bit of grit to it because my girls are complicated. So I'll like name some of the songs down below, link you to the other soundtracks. So that was kind of like my winter music favorites. Which brings me to makeup. Short and sweet, guys. So the lipstick on my lips, this is the lipstick I have been wearing in every video filmed since February, because I picked this up on the writing retreat, the cheese retreat. It is Lancome. This is a $32 lipstick, which pains me. Trust me, it pains me. And I love it so much. It's every once in a while like you spend $32 on a lipstick and you're reminded, oh, when you spend a lot of money on something, sometimes it's worth it. It's because it's a genuinely great product. I love the color. It is so moist. I don't need anything else on my lips. I'm usually a lip gloss girl. Don't need any lip gloss on this. It's like a combo, a perfect combo. I think it looks great on camera. It looks great in person. I love this lipstick. $32. It is the shade Sienna Ultime. It's a cream. It's the L'Absolu Rouge lipstick line. I freaking love it. Highly recommend if you think it's a color that might work on you. Oh, I'm sad because now I feel like I'm gonna have to continue to spend $32 on this because I love it that much. My other winter favorite product is actually all thanks to Lainey, Ginger Reed's Lainey, link her down below. She kept rocking this eyeshadow look and I was like, I love it. I was like, what are you wearing? And she was like, it's Kitten from Stila. This one is called Glitter and Glow. I got it in a holiday kit, but I think they've rebranded it. And that's the thing. Lainey told me what she was wearing and I realized I actually owned it. I owned it, but hadn't worn it in like a year and a half. So yeah, this came in a little like holiday sampler I bought more than 2 years ago. And so this is the shade Kitten, but I also decided to purchase another one and it is called Jezebel. And it is a slightly darker pink because I started wearing Kitten with just eyeliner. And I found that the Kitten was almost too light for me. It looked way better on Lainey. So I got Jezebel to get like a slightly like bolder, brighter, darker version of the same product formula, just with eyeliner, which is what I'm wearing right now. So yeah, those are kind of my winter makeup favorites. I've been rocking the Stila kind of glitter and glow, shimmer and glow color on my lids with just some black eyeliner for my last run of videos because I kind of got tired. My eyeshadow looks take a while, guys. And what I love about this is that I just apply it in a swipe, kind of pat it on. I don't have to worry about fallout or blending. And it looks really chic with just the eyeliner on. It's not a year-long look for me. I'm definitely gonna move back into my complicated looks for summer, but this just feels like such a perfect look for winter. The glowy, the glittery, metallic-y glow with some simple eyeliner. Really into this look right now. And this lipstick, I love this lipstick. It's my new favorite lipstick. It's $32. Why is it $32? But I love it. Finally, my Misc section, the miscellaneous winter favorites I have. The first one is a podcast. It is How Did This Get Made? I've loved this podcast for a long time. It's not just a winter favorite, it's an always favorite. But the reason it's a winter favorite is I was lucky enough to go to 2 live show tapings in Los Angeles. They were back to back the same night. I got to go to the show for Harry and Meghan, the really terrible Lifetime movie, although it wasn't as terrible as I thought it would be, and it's a really great episode. I recommend you listen to it. It's hilarious. And if you know me and what my laugh sounds like, you can kind of hear me on the recording because I was in the front row. And then The Snowman, which is one of my all-time favorite terrible movies. I've seen it 3 times because I still don't understand how it got made. Even after going to the podcast taping and listening to the podcast episode, I really don't know how it got made. It's so bad. But I really enjoyed going to that recording. So How Did This Get Made is a winter favorite, partly because I want to recommend it to all of you if you've never listened to it. It is a podcast by Paul Scheer, Jen Diane Raphael, and Jason Mantzoukas, and they basically watch terrible movies and they talk about them. But what I love is that they, as much as they poke fun at a lot of these movies, it doesn't feel that mean-spirited. I mean, these are people who clearly love movies, and I've learned interesting things about these films, and it's just freaking funny. They have a robust archive. A full archive isn't always out free, but they rotate their old episodes from beyond the paywall. And just by being a How Did This Get Made fan for a couple of years now, I've basically listened to almost every episode. You just wait for them to rotate them out. They rotate them frequently, and they post religiously. Every other week is a new episode, and then the in-between weeks are mini episodes. And I love the mini episodes too. They're just as entertaining, just like different content. It's just Paul answering listener questions, you know, bringing up kind of things that they missed in the episode. Love this podcast. Listen to this podcast. It's so good. My next winter favorite is rain. Weather. Weather is a winter favorite, and if you're not familiar with Los Angeles, winter is basically the only season in LA other than June sometimes that it rains. And we had such a good winter for weather. It has rained so much in Los Angeles. It is gray outside right now, and it brings me such joy, and you're like, I'm the weirdest person. I love LA. I love almost everything about LA, and I do love the weather, but I actually don't like sunshine that much. You're like, what? And I don't like warm weather. You're like, what? You just get used to living here. My favorite seasons generally as an East Coast girl, I love fall and I love spring. I love a perfect even 60. I love a little bit of overcast, and I love rain. And so winter in Los Angeles is like fall and/or parts of spring on the East Coast. So winter is actually my favorite season in Los Angeles. I love the weather. It's when I get to pull up my sweaters and my jackets, and I don't have to shave for months because I get to wear pants and long leggings, and I adore the weather in winter in Los Angeles. And we had tons of rain for the first time in like 11 years. California is not in a drought. So that was a winter favorite for me. Rain. Yeah. And finally, my big winter favorite has been drafting. The joy of a new project. I've just genuinely loved throwing myself into a new book. The thrill of coming up with the idea in November and doing all of the brainstorming and the research and the reading in December and into January, and then starting to draft in January. And the majority of my January and February were just writing almost every day. And I have vlogs about that if you want to watch them. And it's just been a winter favorite because I've loved that feeling again of momentum, of a new book, shiny new book, and progress, and feeling like I'm really accomplishing something. So it's a great feeling. I love revising too, but I love a good drafting phase. So that is my last winter favorite. These are my winter favorites. These videos are so long, and I apologize. If you're still here, hi, thank you. I will link down below to relevant favorites and/or list them so you can find them, all of the documentaries and movies and music. And give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and we'll do a spring one in the summer. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, I post new videos 2 to 3 times a week. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, and as always, happy writing.